and welcome to Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen, the talk show that spotlights HR professionals and talks about all things HR. Today, we will continue the series on Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen called Careers That Rock. Oftentimes, HR professionals are instrumental in helping people find sustainable careers and finding their niche in the world of work. This series highlights amazing professionals and provides insight to those who may be interested in pursuing a career that rocks for them. I am delighted to introduce the fourth guest of the Careers That Rock series. He is none other than attorney Paul Tuberville, former corporate attorney with International Paper. And the career we are highlighting today is corporate attorney. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So glad that you're here to talk about your amazing career as a corporate attorney and to share with others who may be interested in pursuing that career on how to do it, right? So
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's dive right in. So today we're talking about the role of corporate attorney as a profession. So you spent 26 years as a corporate attorney for International Paper Corporation.
Yeah.
And you had this unique opportunity of working as an attorney for the National Labor Relations Board, right?
I did.
Yes. Did you always know you wanted to be an attorney? Tell us about your journey there.
Well, I don't know that I always knew that I wanted to be an attorney. I grew up in a small town, and there weren't any lawyers in my family, but I knew lawyers, and I think I just always kind of gravitated in that direction. So as I went through college, I just became more and more interested in so law school just was kind of a natural progression for me. And once I got to law school, I became more and more interested in kind of the labor and employment area. And so going into my first job really was a job with the National Labor Relations Board. So that was kind of a natural progression for me as well.
That is wonderful. So you went to college for it,
right?
But you knew that you wanted to go more into the employment law side. Is that right?
I really didn't know that until my third year of law school, until I kind of stumbled into a labor law class, which I really didn't think I would enjoy at all.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing about labor law, but once I got into it, I found that it really clicked for me. And I realized that was something I really thought I might want to do as a career, and it turns out that's exactly what happened.
So you found in college, you found a course that sparked your interest, and you stayed there and you stuck with it.
Right.
And now he's done it for a career.
Right.
And been great at it. Yes.
Well, yeah. So I was very fortunate. Yeah. And I don't think it's unusual. A lot of people go in thinking they want to do one thing and come out realizing they really want to do something else. Really want to focus in some other area. So as you gain experience and gain exposure, and that's really not unusual at all. So
along your career, you met this lady named Kathy.
I did.
Yeah, tell me about Kathy Tuberville, your wife.
Well, I'm married to Dr. Kathy Tuberville, who is a professor at the University of Memphis at the Fogelman School, the business school. We've been married for almost 38 years now, and we have 3 daughters, three grown daughters, and we've raised 3 children, had a 2-career family, and
So I think you got a grandbaby on the way.
We do have a grandbaby on the way. So life's about to change. We're about to move into a different chapter. So we'll see how that goes.
It's going to be a different chapter, but it's going to be amazing for you. So yes, Dr. Kathy Tuberville, a good friend of mine, and y'all are ready for this new addition in the family. So let's talk about a typical day in the life of a corporate attorney. Can you tell us, is it a typical day, or does it change frequently?
I think it's really probably like everybody else said, there's really 2 parts to that answer. There's the typical day that you think you're going to have when you walk in the door, and then there's the typical day that you realize you had when you at the end of the day, and usually the 2 aren't the same. at
Yes.
all. But a typical day as a corporate attorney, well, it's going to vary depending upon the company that you work for and what they're asking for from their in-house counsel.
Okay.
But a typical day for me, a lawyer, whether he's an in-house lawyer or an outside attorney, you end up doing a lot of problem solving. My focus was in the employment area, and so we're dealing with employees and HR people, and as better than anyone, employees are very creative with coming up with issues and problems.
Some cases,
and so
yeah.
we would spend a lot of time with that. Probably for me, one of the most rewarding parts of my job would be what I would call the kind of counseling part of the job, and advice, where I would be working with my client, not just problem solving, but working with more strategic issues, how to do things to keep us out of trouble, or how to do things to get us where the company is trying to go, but to get us there the right way, by avoiding issues. So a lot of it would be that. A lot of it sometimes would be training, working with our clients to make sure they understood what the law was and understood what our requirements were and understood what the company's expectations of them were, so that things moved as smoothly as they possibly could. So those were some of the things. And then you just have your normal, emergencies. And like everybody else, there would be days when you'd walk in with your to-do list ready, and at the end of the day realize you never got the first one because the phone rang as you walked into the office and you were off on someone else's to-do list. But that's typical. That's typical for everybody.
So sounds like you're a firefighter, you're a counselor, you're a trainer, you're all of the above. But it's interesting that you say that you are a counselor and a trainer for organizations. A lot of people think you're an attorney, you stick to the law, but oftentimes you are that counsel that help guide and navigate organizations to not do things intentional or unintentional to get themselves in trouble. So that is awesome.
I think there are different levels of where you kind of perform your job, and particularly when you're inside an organization, that you can do that. You can do that when you're outside the organization too, but sometimes it's a little easier to do it if you're inside because you're there all the time and you're more familiar with them and they're more familiar with you, hopefully, and you've developed a rapport and a working relationship, and more intimately what that what the needs of the business are and what the business is trying to do. And so there is that level of where what I just kind of call the problem solving piece, and most people, you can make a fine career of that. You can solve problems all day long,
all day, every day.
That's fine. And there's some great value to that. Somebody has to do that. But then there's a next level, which is kind of the counseling piece, the where you want people to come at the beginning rather than at the end of the process and say, okay, this is what we want to do. What do we need to think about? How do we do it? How do we get there? How do we get there in the proper way, in the appropriate way? And you help them develop that strategy and develop that means. And that's a different level, and a much more rewarding level, at least it was for me.
Yeah. So you just said about reward. So what else is so rewarding about this profession? I know assisting others, helping others, but what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of this job?
Well, the most rewarding aspect of the job, if you looked at one thing, I mean, it's always nice when, if you're a lawyer, you're dealing with disputes, right? And so that's just part of the job. I remember in law school, my first class, the first thing the professor said, you need to understand you're going to be dealing with disputes and you're going to be fighting with people. And if you don't like to do that, then maybe you shouldn't be here. I thought, well,
right.
Thanks very much. But there is a piece of that, and certainly that's always can be fun to get into a dispute and to figure out how to come out on top of that. But perhaps the more rewarding piece of that is to figure out how to resolve that in the most appropriate manner for your client, or maybe even, I always thought the best result is the fight that you didn't have as opposed to the fight that you won.
Yeah. So you want it to be win-win on all sides for the organization and for your client. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about educational requirements as a corporate attorney.
Sure.
Now, you have to have a law degree or not?
Well, you have to be an attorney, and to be an attorney, you have to have a license to practice law.
Okay.
And in order to have a license to practice law, you have to have a law degree in just about every state. Every state has its own requirements, but that's the bottom line. Beyond that, it just depends upon each individual company and what each individual company is looking for. And there is, just like being in private practice and going to work for a law firm or setting out your own individual practice, it will vary with respect to what that individual company is looking for rather. A lot of companies will have a fairly small in-house practice. Some companies, and the company I worked for was an example, was a very large company, and I was involved in the labor and employment area, and we had I don't think it was large for the size of the company we had, but we had, I led a team of about 8 or 9 legal professionals, lawyers and paralegals that were just focused on the labor and employment side. And that covered about over 30,000 employees, and at various times we were in over 40 states, and so there was a big, footprint that was involved. But in that respect, we had and there were other areas of the law where we had attorneys as well. So we had a fairly large in-house corporate practice, but most companies will probably have a relatively small number of people in-house, and it will differ a great deal as far as what they expect those lawyers to do. Some companies will look to a lawyer to do more of the counseling and advice piece as opposed to hands-on handling disputes. Other companies will want to, take that hands-on issue inside, so they're not paying outside lawyers. They find it more economical to do that.
They have an inside lawyer instead of
rather than paying outside legal fees, you're paying someone a salary, and they're going to handle the lawsuit or the charge or whatever it is. And it just depends on what the company has decided is the most effective way to use their in-house legal resources.
I suspect that it becomes more of a consistent. You're more consistent if you have in-house. You can stay consistent. Those attorneys know about the different situations. They know what happened in the past. That's really going to help keep that organization cohesive in law and what they're doing.
I think
in those things.
That's one of the things you strive for, and there's a certain economy of that as well, rather than having a lawyer in this town, particularly if you have an operation that has a number of different locations, rather than have a lawyer in this town and a lawyer in that town and a lawyer in the next town, each of which you have to educate every time a case comes up. It's helpful sometimes to have one person or someone who knows, and so you're not starting. You know what the company's trying to do. You know what the result the company's trying to get to. You know what the policies are. You're not starting from scratch.
Right.
And so there's a certain economy that comes from that, because every company has to look at cost, and one of those costs is your outside legal fees, your outside legal spend, right? And so they have to assess what's the most economical way of doing it. Spending the money outside versus spending the money inside. Where do I get the most bang for the buck, so to speak? And what's the proper balance.
Yeah. So I'm not going to ask you about fees today.
Good.
We're not going to talk about fees, how much it costs, but we know it's much needed, and
Right.
we have to have it, right?
Right.
So you mentioned some of the different jobs. You mentioned paralegals.
Right.
So what are some of the other positions in the law, I guess, arena that people may pursue? I know you said paralegals. Do you have administrative people in those areas? What do you have?
Well, what we would have, most of the time, you may have paraprofessionals,
Okay.
people that don't require a law degree,
Mhm.
and over time, the legal professions become better at, pushing work over to people where you don't have to have a law degree to actually, do the work. There are certain things you have to have a law degree for. You can't provide legal advice without a law degree. That's called practicing without a license. and
Right.
that's prohibited. But there are certain things that you can do, or another administrative person can do, and free the lawyer up to do the things that only the lawyer can do.
Can do. Okay.
And
All right.
so there's paralegals, certainly in litigation, in real estate, and other areas where there's a lot of document work. Paraprofessionals can do those sorts of things that lawyers, you don't have to be a lawyer to do that. And so everyone has had to become better at figuring those things out, so that you're not having your most expensive people
Yes.
doing work that can be done by more effectively and more efficiently by others.
Okay. So there are other professions within the law professions that you have. You have your paralegals, your administrative people. So that may be an avenue to look into if law interests you. So
Certainly.
some may say that you have to encompass certain competencies, such as being organized, being analytical, and definitely have a gift of gab, right, to be a lawyer. What are some of the competencies you would say a person interested in becoming an attorney should have or should learn?
Well, and I'll think about this particularly with respect to an in-house job. Because
Okay.
an in-house job may be a little different than and there are some things that may apply a little bit more to an in-house job, but you named a few of them. You definitely have to have analytical skills. You certainly, and I think the most important thing for this job and pretty much any job, you really do have to have strong written and oral communication skills. You've got to be able to communicate effectively and be able to get your point across. It is really important to have a strong ethical grounding. As a lawyer, you have to have an understanding of the law, and you have to understand where that is, and you have to guide your client to make sure that they're staying within the bounds of the law. And so you have to start from there. If you're in-house, business acumen is important. You really need to understand your business.
Yes.
You don't just need to be a good lawyer, but you need to understand how that relates to the business, what your business's goals, what its mission is, and how what you're doing as a lawyer relates to that.
Right.
Not just kind of as we used to call it, calling balls and strikes. There's a certain value to that.
Yes.
But what you're really hoping to do is saying, okay, here's what we have to do legally and ethically, but here's also what we can do to help you get to where you're trying to get.
Right.
As a company, and that's particularly the case in the HR area.
Right. Absolutely.
The employment area. Those things are important. Agility is important. Being able to juggle multiple priorities, is important. Is important. All of those things kind of come into play. Having confidence in dealing with upper management is important.
That's important.
Being able to communicate with that, being able so they have confidence with you. But sometimes, you have to be able to, managerial courage is important.
Right.
Sometimes there are times when you have to say, no.
You have to say no sometimes. You're right.
And there are some times when you have
Yeah.
to say, well, not that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there are ways to accomplish things that you want, but
Right.
perhaps not the way, that way.
Yeah.
But sometimes a lawyer has to deal with, you have to deliver news that the client does
Mhm.
not want to hear,
Mhm.
and you have to be comfortable and confident and able to do that in a
Mhm.
way that the client understands.
Mhm.
But you also have to do it in a way that the client understands that you're not just being a barrier.
Yes.
One
Yeah.
of the things I always hated to say here,
Mhm.
and you hear it a lot in a company, is that,
Yeah.
okay, we've done this, we've done that, we put our plan together, and now we have to go and get it past legal,
Right.
or get it through,
That's some of the language that's used. We
or
gotta-
get it
we gotta get approved.
through legal, which
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
kind of worried about
Yeah.
what they meant by that. But that's one way of doing it. But if you're really thinking about it appropriately, your legal resources,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're inside or outside, need to be part of it from the very beginning, so
Yes.
they can help you shape what you're doing in a way that you're doing it that's going to be appropriate. I used to say, if the last thing you do
Mhm.
is talk to your lawyers about whether or not this is okay, and there's a 10-step process, and there was something that was
Yes.
problematical at step number
Mhm.
3,
Mhm.
well, then you've got to go back to step number 3 and kind of start over. But if you
Mhm.
had the lawyer involved with you at the beginning, you
Mhm.
could have dealt with it at step number 3.
Right.
And it would have been much better to
Mhm.
do that. So having that sort of relationship
Mm-hmm.
and having that sort of confidence, so
Mhm.
that they include you in those sort of
Mhm.
things, that's where you have a practice that I think is really rewarding and valuable, really,
Yes.
to everybody.
Yeah. And so being that business partner, the organization and the attorney should be business partners. They should work together, not at the end when you're in trouble, but you bring on and you operate as business partners from the beginning to the end to have a smooth outcome. You talk so much about the career of an attorney. So what advice would you give someone who would like to become an attorney? What advice would you give them? Words of wisdom, so to speak.
Well, I would say, first of all, you won't be successful as a lawyer if you don't know how to communicate.
Okay.
That's the
Mhm.
first thing.
Mhm.
So focus on communication skills, focus
Mhm.
on writing skills,
Mhm.
focus on oral skills, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anything that you can't that you can avoid communicating about. So that's the first thing.
So the attorney has to, they have to write,
You
right?
have to
They have to write briefs, right? So that's where you say the writing communication. And then you have to stand up and speak on behalf of your client sometimes. So yeah,
And you
so
have to
the
do it.
reading.
You have to do it effectively. You have to do it persuasively, but you also have to do it efficiently.
Yes.
Nobody wants when I was in private practice,
Okay.
I had a client once who came and said, "We're about to meet on this case that we just got. We need a memo laying out this case,
Yeah.
and we need it tomorrow." I worked half the night on this very comprehensive memo that was
Yeah.
probably 15 or 20 pages, laying it
Wow.
all out. Presented it to them the next morning.
Uh-huh.
They said, "We don't need 20 pages. We needed 2 pages. We're not going to sit here and read 20 pages."
Oh my goodness.
So we need something that we can quickly
Yeah.
digest, and that's often that's often the case.
Yeah.
So you need to figure out how to do it effectively and efficiently.
Yeah.
You have to do it in a way so that people understand that you're just not saying no all the time.
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, really kind of understand where your interests lie,
Mm-hmm.
and try to follow that. And then the third thing I would say is just try to get as broad a range of experience as you can, because you never know where things will take you I would say probably most of my colleagues and classmates that I've known over the years are probably doing something, even if they're lawyers, they're doing something pretty significantly different than they thought they would be doing.
Yeah. So you have to have that broad, that broad sweep. So talk about that just a little bit, just for a minute, because you talked about there's so many different aspects or disciplines in law. You talked about you were an employment lawyer for so many years. So you have what? Prosecutors. You have, what are some of those other things?
Well, I'll just take my in-house department that I worked in. And of course, this was a big company. And so they had a lot of resources. We had lawyers that were devoted to labor and employment. We had litigators that were dealing with, lawsuits and those sorts of liability claims against the company. Environmental issues, intellectual property issues, trademarks and copyrights, real estate issues, just general corporate law issues, security. Compliance is a big issue these days, just making sure that you're in compliance with the various corporate requirements, corporate governance requirements, requirements of your customers and your vendors. There are a lot of things in a lot of different directions that you can go. Yeah. And having said that, a lot of people are just good, strong generalists. Yes. And that's just within the corporate realm. There's certainly criminal areas. There's certainly when you think about what people need in terms of estates and trust and those sorts of things. There are lots of different areas to go.
Wow. Did you hear that? Did you hear it? He laid it out. It's so many different aspects that you can do. And so if you're interested, we know now that being a corporate attorney is a career that rocks. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing with our audience.
My pleasure.
Well, great. So, wow, we have learned so much about the career and profession of corporate attorney. And my guest, attorney Paul Tuberville, an amazing profession, he told us. Being informed and aware of possibilities of careers that are available is paramount. HR professionals can be the resource to help educate and guide you to the career and the profession that rocks for you. Be sure to watch a new episode of Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen, the first of every month on the YouTube channel of the same name, and on Comcast Xfinity Channel 17, Monday nights at 8 p.m. Be sure to watch Let's Talk HR with Dr. Deneen and prior episodes at any time. Go to the YouTube channel and type in the talk show title. Be sure to subscribe, no fee, and click on the notification bell. This is HR TV. I'm Dr. Deneen, and I want to talk HR with you. HR forever. See you next time.